What's up? Today I'm going to show you how I fish and rig a speed worm, namely my CPF Lures Thumper Pro. We make it in a couple different versions. We have the floating version right here. I'll get into that in a little bit. And we make it in a standard version right here, 7 inches long. It's not a speed worm, that's another company. This is the Thumper. I drew this on a piece of paper and designed it. I've talked about it in some of my other videos, but I've never really dedicated a video to how I fish it or how I rig it. So I'm going to go over that, hopefully catch some fish. I've already been out here this morning, caught a bunch of fish here this morning. Had a 15-year-old kid catch his PB on one of these things, slow rolling it underwater. Out here in the scattered hydrilla, I'm on Lake Toho, but let's get into it. Not much talking, here we go. First, let's talk about Texas rigging it or slow rolling it. Here, I have it rigged up on 30-pound braid, bobber stopper, a 3/16 ounce burnt tungsten weight, bullet weight there, a 5/0 hook. It's one of my 2X 5/0 offset hooks, and this is one of the floating thumpers. It is the floating thumper, and I have it on a Texas rig. I'm only in about, or I have it on with a weight. I'm only in about 2.5 feet of water here. So I'm gonna be slow rolling this underwater. Just a slow, medium retrieve, like you would a spinnerbait, or if you gave a kid a worm and never taught him how to slow drag a Texas rig worm. This is my floating thumper. It's made up of plastic called PMR. It's virtually indestructible. This actual worm, today was the third fishing trip with this worm. Not this pack of worms, this one worm. This PMR plastic's virtually indestructible. Generally, if I'm gonna put a weight on, I'm gonna throw the standard thumper. But these fish aren't super active. With this 3/16 ounce weight, I can get good casting weight. I can cast it a long way. But being the floating thumper, because it's buoyant, I can really slow roll it like a spinnerbait. So it's super easy. It's one of the easiest things. It shouldn't even work, it's so easy. Basically, I got on a 7'4" heavy action Omen black rod from 13 Fishing with the Concept C reel, one of the new Concept C reels here. I like it on a long, heavy rod. Get a good casting distance. Catch a lot of big fish doing this. But basically, super easy. I'm out here in open water. It looks like there's nothing out here but open water, but there's patches and clumps of hydrilla. There's some bluegill beds in here, and these fish are just all around in this area. And basically, I'm making a long cast of this thing and just slow rolling it. I mean, this is it. I get a lot of questions on how do you fish that speed worm. Just throw it out and reel it in. There are some little tricks to it. When I come through a good clump of hydrilla like I just did, I'll twitch it up out of it every once in a while. I'll give it a half-second pause every once in a while, but basically, it's just cast and reel. Cast and reel. They will flat out murder this thing when they hit it. They will attack it. There's no deception of whether there's a fish on there or not. They hit it hard. Important thing is, this is not a spinnerbait. It's not a rattle trap. It's not a chatterbait. When they eat this thing, that hook is buried in there. It's weedless. Let them eat it. They're not gonna let it go. Boom, feel them hit it. Try your hardest. Your hands may say go, but you gotta tell your brain no. Stop that bait, let them eat it. 1, 2, 3, lean into them, set the hook. With this 30-pound black braid I have on here, this is our 9X braid from CPF Lures. You don't have to get that big of a hook set. There's no stretch to it, and you can just kind of good steady lean into them. It's that simple. I'm just going along, just slow rolling this thing. Cover a lot of water with this. They'll eat a soft plastic jerk bait like our shad jerk or a fluke or whatever brand you want to throw, but this tends to attract bigger fish. Right now we only make it in this size, 7-inch, but I like to go after big fish. This has been a thing here in Florida for a long time, speedworm fishing. I don't remember, I learned it years and years ago, and this one is designed by me. Way bigger tail than the competitors. Tail doesn't pull off, especially on this floating one. You're not going to cast it off. You can stretch this thing out about 3 feet long. It will not rip. We have it sectioned off here so you can cut it down if you want it shorter. You can cut it without the sections. This just makes it easier. Cut it down. Again, about 15 to 20 fish have been caught on this one worm here, and it's still going. Move on to the other way I like to fish this thing, and the reason we originally made it out of a floating type plastic, this PMR plastic, which is not Elastec. This is a different plastic. This is called PMR. We burn these things across the surface. Rigged like I have it on my other rod, with a lot of people will just Texas rig these. I've caught them in brush piles, just Texas rigging it like you would a trick worm or a ribbon tail worm, just Texas rigging it. But it's specifically made to be slow rolled through the water like that. This PMR floats. I mean, it floats. You can see here, I got the same 5/0 hook, no weight on this one. Just rigged up like this. Some of you may want to use a screw lock hook. That's fine. I just have this hook in here. Nice and straight, weedless. And get down here and show you. There's a 5/0 hook and it floats. So this one was designed to be burned across the surface. We'll take this worm. You can do it here when this grass starts topping out, which it is. If there's a little more surface activity, I might burn this thing across the surface. Back in scattered pads, scattered Kissimmee grass, any kind of grass that's scattered, or if you have more active fish on this flat, take this right here and burn it across the surface like a weedless, soft plastic whopper plopper. I made that tail aggressive, so it'll almost have full rotation. And it floats high and dry. I've caught a lot of fish doing this. When this water level here on this lake comes up and these fish move back more in the grass, I will move back there with them and reel this thing right through the lily pads, right through all that scattered grass, and they'll crush it. The benefit with having the floating plastic over your standard plastic when you're burning it over the surface, you can stop it and it's not going to sink. It's going to sit right there and you can give it a popping action like you would a topwater plug. Stop in a hole, you're coming through some thick grass, you see an open hole, maybe you see something waking through it, through the pads. Stop it, let it float, get that fish to come up on you. Go, twitch it. That's the floating thumper in addition to the standard float, the standard thumper, and we even have another one, the slow floater, which isn't quite as buoyant as this. It'll have a slow sink to it. You may want to throw that. If they're not willing to come up on the surface, when you have some fish following, you can rig it up just like this, the slow floater. Reel it in, stop, and it stays up on the surface because it is buoyant, but it will slowly sink. So we have the standard thumper, the slow floater, and the floating thumper. You can find those on our website, cpflures.com. They're going to be they're in a few tackle stores, and we have some other things in the works. But that's it. This, you just burn across the surface. Stop it, stop and go, twitch it, chug it, the floating thumper. Which is commonly referred to as a speed worm. If you hear me saying speed worm, I know that's another brand, but it's like anything. Sometimes I refer to it as a speed worm. So, I showed you how to rig it. I like to rig it on a 5/0 hook. You can use a 4/0, I like a 5/0. You could use a screw lock hook in its replacement, or replacing this. Slow roll underwater with a 3/16 ounce bullet weight. You could even go bigger or smaller. It's your preference on how fast or slow you want to have to reel it or the depth of the water. But now, I'm gonna try and catch some fish on it to prove to you that it works. We get a lot, I really appreciate it. People send us pictures all the time. I had a guy send me a picture of a almost 8-pounder he caught on one of our thumpers just a couple days ago. Keep sending those pictures in. You can email them to us from our website. You can tag us on Instagram, CPF Lures, tag us on Facebook, or send them directly to me. We'll share them if you want to. We really appreciate everybody who's buying this stuff. Let's see if we can catch some fish on it, and that's it. All right, I'm gonna stay out here a little bit. These fish seem to be out in the center. I'm gonna slow roll the floating thumper with a 3/16 ounce weight like I was describing before. See how long it takes me to catch a fish here. Some of this grass wasn't topped out the other day, but it's starting to top out now. Not a lot of feeding activity going on. It's right in the middle of the day. It's 12:30 in the afternoon. We caught quite a few through here this morning. Nothing huge. 4 1/4, a couple 3s. Decent quality fish, nothing huge. I'm sure there's a big one living in here, so let's see if I can catch it. Just got hammered. Letting them eat. Not a bad one. Absolutely crushed it. About 10 feet off of grass line. Oh, flip him. Not a bad fish, not a giant. Crushed it. Ate that floating thumper. I've only been fishing for about 10 minutes. 2-pounder, 2.5. Just slow rolling it. I had reeled it about 10 feet. Again, I've been using the same worm now. This is the 4th day I'm using it. It's a really, really tough plastic, which some people might be concerned that it's hard to get the hook through. But you see what I do here? I run the hook all the way through, see? Once you create a path through that hook, it slides real easy. Then I just back it up a little bit and just tip that point under the skin like that. See that? Stays on there nice and straight. I also like to rig it. See how the hook is on the back side here? Don't know if it matters. You might be able to rig it sideways or on the other side. I just always tail curves this way, hooks on this side. 30-pound braid. Just slow rolling. They'll hit it sometimes. Some days they want you to pause it and they're gonna hit it when it's dropping. Lately, just mindless reeling. If I run into a big clump, I'll pop it out. Super easy. It's great. You can cover a lot of water with it. I don't hit it all year. For me, it's better in the early summer months, like right now. But there's people starting to find out about this. I know some guys that are catching them on certain lakes up in Tennessee that have grass in them. Some guys in Louisiana are fishing them. Had a couple of guys in some lakes in Texas. Oh, there's another bite. Oh, that was a pickerel. Chain pickerel, love them too. Bit my line in half. Anyway, finding out about them. Look at that clean cut right there. Toothy critters. Re-rig and get back at it. Oh. Oh, there's another one. Oh, that one's pulling pretty good. Chuck. That was a good one. It looked this big on this camera. Well, it may be pointing up in the air. That was much bigger than the one I lost, or the one I caught. Hammered it. They wrecked this thing when you're reeling through the water. Good Lord. Chuck. They're just scattered out here. No rhyme or reason to where they're at. My reel was loose. Now it's not. That was a 4 or 5 pounder on the long distance scale. Probably actually a 4 or 5 pounder. 6 to 7 pounds on a long distance scale. Hammered. Eat it. Yeah, he's swimming back in the boat. He's just a little guy. They gotta eat too. Middle of the day here, they're not biting that great. That's only the second one I boated. I've only been fishing 45 minutes. Boated 2, missed 2, broke 1 off. Broke off the 7 to 8 pounder. It wasn't 7 to 8 pounds. Good 4 to 5 pounds from what I could see. But I want to catch one myself. That fish hit it, let it go, came back, tacked it again. I like to throw it on braid because braid cuts through the water. Well, it's about time for me to head in. Thanks for watching. This is how I fish a speed worm, how I rig a speed worm, or my thumper, commonly referred to. This style of worm or soft plastic, commonly referred to as a speed worm. You'll hear me saying that a lot by accident. It's another brand, but this is my CPF Lures Thumper. 3 versions of it, like I said earlier. Just to reiterate on that, this is the floating thumper I'm throwing with a 3/16 ounce burnt tungsten bullet weight and a 5/0 hook on 30-pound line. I'm slow rolling it like a spinnerbait through some scattered hydrilla on the shallow flat here on Lake Toho. Even our standard thumper, which I do use a lot, I just really want this to be more buoyant so I can really slow it down. Our standard thumper, like some of the other brands that you frequently with a hard, try and make a hard long cast here, the tail's gonna fly off. The way this tail's designed, bigger tail, just the whole design of it, the twist we put in it, it's got a lot more action. Even especially at slower speeds than some of the other brands of this style worm. And you're not gonna cast that tail off. I don't care how hard you try and cast it, that tail's not gonna fly off like they did, like some of the other brands do. But that's why we try to design it. All of our baits, we try and make them just a little bit better than the competitors. That's what we're trying to do. Thanks for watching. Check out our thumper, some of our other baits, cpflures.com. Favorite rod, throw it on 7'4", heavy action, Omen Black, with any one of the concept reels or any of the reels from 13 Fishing. Let me know what you think. We'll see you next time.